Below is a voiceover-ready YouTube script in a calm, investigative, victim-first style, built around one of the most troubling patterns in national park missing person cases. When someone enters a vast, familiar landscape and simply does not come back. It focuses primarily on Ruthanne Ruppert, while briefly situating her case among other unresolved national park disappearances to show how these mysteries fit a larger pattern. Because your prompt asks for a specific 1980s cold case, but the details provided center on later Yosemite and Rocky Mountain cases, I'm using the strongest victim-centered case material available from the details you gave, and I'm not adding speculation beyond that. People often think of national parks as places of awe, quiet, and distance from everyday life. But for the families of the missing, that same beauty can become something else entirely, a landscape full of unanswered questions. One of those people was Ruthanne Ruppert.
She was last seen in Yosemite National Park
On August 14th, 2000, around midday, near the Curry Village and Yosemite Medical Clinic area. At the time she vanished, she was not part of some dramatic crime scene or high-profile investigation. She was just a person in a park, moving through a place where people hike, rest, get help, and continue on with their day. Her name is now part of the National Park Service's list of unresolved missing person cases. That list matters because it shows something unsettling about these places. When someone disappears in a national park, the explanation is often simple at first. They got lost. They were delayed. They had an accident. The terrain is rugged, the weather can shift quickly, and even experienced visitors can run into trouble. But sometimes, despite searches and years of effort, no clear answer ever emerges. Ruppert's last known movements place her in an area that can feel routine in the middle of a park like Yosemite.
She was seen near Curry Village in the medical clinic, and investigators believe she may have headed toward the Yosemite Falls to forest a route.
That detail is important because it gives investigators a possible direction, but not a destination. It is one of those narrow clues that can define a case for decades. Enough to suggest a path, not enough to reveal what happened on it. And that is where the day changed. The disappearance itself did not unfold in a way that left behind an obvious explanation. There was no confirmed sighting after that midday period, and no confirmed recovery of remains. Years later, her backpack was found in 2008, but that discovery did not close the case or explain her movements. Instead, it added one more object to an investigation already defined by absence. A backpack can tell investigators where someone may have been or what they carried, but it cannot speak for the person who vanished.
Ruppert's case remains unresolved, and that word says a lot. It means investigators have not confirmed her location, her fate, or the full sequence of events after she was last seen. In a national park, those gaps are especially hard to bridge because the environment itself can erase evidence. Footprints disappear. Weather changes the ground. Dense terrain, cliffs, forests, water, and distance all work against a search. That is part of what makes these cases so difficult, and why the National Park Service's Investigative Services Branch keeps a cold case roster and asks the public for help. The agency says some of these cases go back decades, and that they rely on public tips, old evidence, and newer technology to revisit them. That approach exists because in these investigations, the missing piece is often not a lack of effort. It is a lack of a final, reliable clue. Ruppert is not the only person whose disappearance remains open. In Yosemite, Michael Fissery went missing in 2005 while hiking in the Till Valley area and has never been located. Walther H. Reinhardt disappeared in 2002 with his vehicle found near the White Wolf Trailhead area. but no confirmed sighting or recovery followed. And in Rocky Mountain National Park, James Pruitt disappeared during a day hike in 2019. Rangers found his vehicle, but repeated search efforts did not turn up enough to explain where he went. These cases are different in detail, but they share the same problem. A person can be seen entering a park, a vehicle can be found, and then the trail simply runs out. In some cases, nature explains the loss. In others, investigators are left with a vanishing point and no final answer. The obstacles in these investigations are not abstract. They are physical, immediate, and sometimes overwhelming. National parks cover enormous areas, and the terrain can be unforgiving.
Search teams have to deal with weather, elevation, distance, and the possibility that a missing person may have traveled somewhere unexpected. In Pruitt's case, harsh weather and rugged terrain complicated the search. In a place like Yosemite, that same scale can turn even a substantial response into a race against time. And when time passes, the case changes. What was once an active search becomes a cold case. Witness memories fade. Possible sightings become harder to verify. Trails become less useful as evidence sources. Investigators are left to compare old reports, re-examine physical evidence, and wait for the one thing that can still move a case forward. A credible tip from someone who knows something and has not yet spoken up. The National Park Service explicitly encourages the public to submit those tips for unresolved cases. There is also an older history of unresolved disappearances in national parks that shows this is not a modern problem.
Alfred Beilhartz, just 4 years old, disappeared near Fall River in Rocky Mountain National Park in 1938 while hiking with his family and was never found. That case, like the others, remains a reminder that a disappearance in a park can outlast the search itself by decades. And then there is Paul Braxton Fugate, a park ranger at Chiricahua National Monument, who vanished while hiking in 1980. According to the National Park Service, newer information suggests he may not have disappeared because of an accident. That statement matters because it shows how these cases can evolve slowly over time, sometimes introducing new questions long after the original search has gone cold. But in Ruthanne Ruppert's case, the central facts remain sparse, and that is what makes it so haunting. She was last seen in a specific part of Yosemite. There was a possible route. Her backpack was found years later. And yet the most important fact of all is still missing. What happened between her last known sighting and the point where the trail ran out? That is the reality in many of these national park disappearances. The park is large enough to hide a person, and in some cases, large enough to hide the answer too. Today, Ruppert's case remains unresolved. So do the cases of Fissery, Reinhardt, Pruitt, Fugate, and many others listed by the National Park Service. Investigators still rely on old evidence, new methods, and public memory to try to close the gap. But until there is a confirmed location, confirmed remains, or a verified account of what happened, these disappearances stay open. And that leaves the same question hanging over all of them. In a place where so many people pass through every day, how does one person simply vanish? What do you think is the hardest part of investigating a disappearance in a place as vast as a national park? The terrain, the passage of time, or the silence left behind?